Hey everyone, Karen the Warp Spinster here. Welcome to my channel. Thank you for joining me today. Today I want to do some wonky spools, I think. As always, we will see how it goes. I have some scrap 2.5-inch squares and other bright scraps, and I have some white background, and I also have my bin of black and white prints, as well as a few mixed in with the scraps. I want to just not worry about dimensions or sizes because I want these to be wonky, and I have a plan for how I want to create the spool effect at the top and the bottom. You know, we'll see how it goes, and we can just pretend it's how we planned it, right? And then we have lots of options for the thread part of the spool, which is where you could really have a lot of fun with it. So you could construct them with those 2.5-inch squares we have floating around. You could use strips, you could use crumbs, you could add in all kinds of embellishments. You could do the center as just a single fabric with all kinds of embellishment on it, or with just a single fabric that you really like. We are going to try a couple different things in different sizes and proportions and see what we can come up with. You know, there may be an Alice one in here. We don't know. I'm not seeing a lot of red scraps here, but it could happen. We'll see. And then the background is just going to be the white that I usually use for backgrounds. Of course, you could reverse everything and, you know, make the spools white and the background all different kinds of color. Oh, that'd be kind of interesting, wouldn't it? Sort of a ghost or a spirit spool. My plan is to make the wooden part of the spool, the top and the bottom, out of black and white prints and scraps. But you could, of course, always do black and white in the center where the threads are and bright colors on the outside. You could mix them, all kinds of choices. Lots of fun things you can do when you're just planning on wonkiness. So I think I will start out with the center because I will build everything around that. So we'll just try putting some things together, I think. And, you know, maybe I'll save the 2.5-inch squares and just start with some scraps I have here from some project or other. And just start putting together, I don't know, what do you think? Do I want to do a crumb style kind of thing? I might do that for fun, just because people like crummy things. They like making crumb stuff, so maybe we'll put some things together that are sort of crumbs, maybe, and see where it goes. And I don't really care what kind of proportion or thing I end up with. I could just do it for however long I like. That's the other nice thing about doing this, is that you can make them pretty large and use up a lot of scraps, or if you want to do something small, that works too. So I will just put together some crumb things. There are all sorts of good videos on making crumb blocks. I will, if I think of it, put down in the description a link to my crumb video, which I made a long time ago. It was just on a whim. I just had a comment from some kind of person who said that maybe her microphone or her speakers are a little off, but I seem very soft-spoken, and that was probably true, though I am not often accused of that. So bear with it if the voice is not particularly great. I wasn't really, I don't know. I wasn't really intending to start doing a lot of videos, so you'll just take it as it is. Anyway, I will start by doing that and then just keep adding pieces on. And when I have something that looks reasonable, that I'm not embarrassed to show you all, I will come back. I've just started to trim this up now, and I'm not especially worried about how much. I think for this first one, at least, I am going to try to end up with a rectangle that has parallel sides, just while we try out some other things. But I certainly think it would be possible to trim off this here, do it wonky in terms of the dimensions, etc. And this one may turn out to be a little wonky depending on how good my cutting is today. And I make no promises. So it's looking like this is going to be a lovely, really full spool of thread, which is always good. Oops, that could be trimmed a little more. Some of that's going to get taken up in the seam, but I don't want to risk having anything poking out there. So here we have the center, and I think just for fun, I'm going to do a couple of embellishy things and put some stabilizer behind this and do just a couple of embroidery things across there. I'll use white thread because I'm lazy and it's what it's in my machine, but I think it will blend nicely with the black and white of the spool and the white of the background. So we'll just see how it goes. I've got a couple of favorite stitches, as you all probably know if you've been watching other videos, and we'll see how those look. I was just thinking that this could be kind of a fun stitch sampler if you want to test out some stitches and then have a record of what they look like. This could be kind of fun. So 3 different stitches there, my 3 favorites. Now we need to decide what we're going to do with the wooden portion of the spool. So this is our background, so I'll have that there for reference. And I've been thinking that I want to do predominantly black for the spool portion, just because I think that will be a better contrast. Not sure how I'm feeling about that. That may be too predominantly black. Let me try it with predominantly white. Would be kind of, ooh, here I go again. Was just thinking it would be kind of fun to do a diagonal on the spool and then have lighter and darker on. All right, focus, Karen, we're doing this right now. I like this one. You could, of course, do just a straight stripe, and you all know I have no objection with doing just a straight stripe, which I think would be kind of cool, but then we're going to be adding pieces here, and it may not blend as well as I think it will with this one. I don't have to use the same prints though, so I could have this, say, be the top portion of the spool and then use this as the wonky part of the side. Well, you have no idea what I meant by what I just said, do you? All right. You know, when I said I was going to do this parallel here, it would absolutely be fine and fun to do this a little bit crooked and then have this be more wonky. So I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to start with, actually I need to do the sides first. All right, so what I'm going to do is do the background of the sides and then do a sew and flip to do the sort of, see if I can get this triangular shape that makes up the spool on the side. And so let's say I'm going to do I have a, no, that's just a narrow strip back there. All right, so I'm going to cut a strip I'm going to give it plenty of room here because I may want to wonkify that. All right, let me zoom in a little bit again and pull this up. Get carried away and I'm not paying attention to whether or not you all can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to just split this. Well, no, I'm not. I've got a whole lot of selvage over here, so I'm going to cut that off. And then, let's split this into 2 different widths, because they don't have to be the same width on each side, right? This may get too wonky. Maybe we won't even be able to tell it's a spool in the end. But we're going to try it. We can always start over or rip things out. All right, first thing I want to do is to make this a little crooked. I'm wondering if at the bottom I want it to, maybe not. I was thinking I want it to look stable on the bottom, like it's actually going to sit on something. But I'm not sure that I need to do that, actually. The next step will be to fold back some triangles there. And let's do one of these for the triangles, and they don't have to be little right triangles like we're used to. They can just be wonky personified, highly wonkified. All right, and I think I'm going to do a sew and flip kind of thing. And boy, that's going to be pretty big, isn't it? What if we do this way and flip back? All right, I'm going to try that. We'll see how it works. So I'm just going to sew a sort of straightish sort of seam there. And I can always lop off some of the top if it looks like that's too big a piece there. So I'll just sew a seam corner to corner-ish. I think this piece is going to turn out to be too large, but I can always get some off there. And what I trimmed from here, I can use over here. And then we'll have, maybe not this one. What did I decide on this one? I guess it doesn't matter, but then we could have this across here. And then we'll do another triangle down here. I don't know how much like a spool it will be, but we'll find out, right? All right, so I'm going to flip this one, sew and flip that one, and then I think that one's probably going to get cut off a bit there, but we'll be back for that. I think this is kind of cute, having it go down from a larger to a smaller size, but I'm thinking this is probably a little too large. What I'm going to do now is to sew these on, and then I'll put the topper up there. No, I can't sew them on yet because I have to do this at the bottom first. So I'm going to give myself a little room on these, just because, you know, me. And question becomes, do I want to use this same print here? I might do that just to unify it all a little bit. Or maybe that won't really matter, as long as it's a predominantly black piece. Could do, say, this one down here, and then we will put on the top and bottom. And this doesn't actually have to be the same width as this piece up here. That will be interesting, don't you think? I might have to cut it like that. Well, we'll see where we're going with this. I will do these 2 triangles these two triangles to make sure I get them in the right direction, and then we can come and put the top and bottom on. This is not going to come to a point here, but I'm going to try that out and see how that works. Next step is to sew these on, and then I will trim and sew on the top and bottom. We'll see what we have. This is ready to trim now, and this one is going uphill or downhill depending on how you look at it. So I left some extra up here for that, and trim that, and then this piece will be, I think, roughly straight in relation to the sides, perpendicular to the sides, I should say. All right, now we add on strips, the top and bottom, and I'm going to do that and then decide how wide or tall, I guess, I want those to be. So I've got this strip. I'm not sure I'm going to trim it perfectly perpendicular to the side, so give myself a little wiggle room there. And when I come back, we will decide how wide those should be. Not that wide, I'm pretty sure. Now, I know these are much too wide. I mean, we have something that kind of resembles a spool, if you know what to look for. I think that's going to be better. I wonder if I might even want to lop some off on this side. This, I think I'm going to make the top parallel. So this diagonal then is not repeated. Do I want it smaller, narrower, shorter, whatever you want to call that, or wider? Call out your thoughts to me. I think I'm going to do it about like that, and of course I'll have to add on a 1/4 inch for a seam. I'm just really wondering about this side. Could do it like this, then over here like that, so that I do have points. I might do that, but I'm going to trim these first, and that's about over here. That's about 3/4 of an inch, so I want about an inch from there, but making it all straight, be a little more than that. This is me getting nervous about that now, so and then I have a piece for another spool, hopefully. Okay, now we're nothing if not brave, right? Aren't we brave? Yes? All right, I'm trying to leave some seam allowance there so I actually have points in the end. Maybe I'm not happy with that, but we'll see. We'll find out here. No, I think I might leave this one pretty close to that. That's a pretty, I would say, drastic up there. So there's a possibility. I think I would prefer to have these always end in a point over here, whether it's, so the edges are, whether or not I had cut that off, I would still have a point here. I won't have one unless I slice that like that, which I'm not inclined to do. That would be better, wouldn't it? It's not a bad block, it just doesn't look very spooly. So I think I will make a point to do that on the next one. The next ones I want to do tall and slender. And I think I'll do strips across here and maybe go for, I don't know, kind of almost some brighter brights. This green is, I want to say dulls it down, but it's not quite as bright, so I think I will explore that. And the positive negative thing, you could do it on a diagonal, as I discussed before, or you could maybe, of course, you could do the spirit one where this is white and this is black. You could just make the background of some black and some white. And if your background is black, then you would probably use a predominantly white piece to contrast with that. Lots of choices. Always, always, always lots of choices. You could also do some couching here instead of this stitching. Of course, you could do this stitching in any color, but you could also have some fiber that's you couch, so, and it could run over the edges if it's a thread coming off the spool. Many choices. I've always liked spool blocks. I'm less fond of the ones that are pointed like here. I rather have them like this and then come down, but you could certainly do it where it's all just comes to a point, including the top and bottom of the wooden pieces. I think definitely, I'm always glad when I do a first one, and if there are things I don't like, then I've learned from that. I definitely would have preferred this to be shorter and have this come to a point. This is almost much too much tall in order for this to look like a spool. This one's okay. It's just wonky. It's a little different size, but this is just not working for my brain to interpret that as a spool as easily anyway. And I'm also wondering what this would look like if it was more predominantly black. So something like a polka dot there. I think maybe I'll try that on the next one, which will be a tall and slender one. All right, so there's first one. Now let's go on to second one. I've pulled out some strips from my strip scraps bag, and these are brighter than the last one. The last one had some brights, but this I wanted to be really fluorescent, kind of bright. And I'm going to have to try it because I just do. What if we had like a black and white stripe in the middle? I have to do it. I just do. So I will assemble these in various widths, and they could be wonky, could be straight. Either one will work. But I think I might do a little bit wonky on some of them. Here is our tall and slender. You know, spools have body types too. You've got this old style, I'll just call it Coates and Clark Scott style, and then you have the Aurifil style and the Gutermann and Sulky style. You could do all different kinds of spool types here. I am thinking about, now I was thinking I could put these on first and then build the sides, but I really want these to sort of cap what's going on the sides. So I will be cutting some white background again, and I'm going to do it a little more evenly. They won't be exactly the same width, but I think I'll do it more evenly. I can see doing this even slimmer. So you do a whole variety. You'd have the short and stocky, really full, and then tall and slender, or you could do all of one type or the other. You know, this just really makes this much less, I love this sort of fluorescent kind of bright here. But that is not to everyone's liking, so it's good to do a variety, yes? All right, I'm going to, I think I'm going to try cutting these to the height that I actually want, which I think will be easier to manage the triangles and how they fold over. So I could make this very tall and slender on the sides to go with, you can get trimmed completely, to go with this general slim look, which I think might be worth considering. But I want to make the decision now so that I don't run into this time where I'm not coming to a point. So this is actually straight here. I'm gonna have to trim that or it will throw me off on cutting this stuff. So, pardon my elbow. Now, I want this to be pretty slender, but remembering that I also have to do seam allowances in here. So, I don't know, roughly like that maybe. And then this one, you probably can't see this elvage here, but I could see that it's a much, much tighter weave. All right. So these will be the two sides. And what am I going to do for these? Should I do different sizes of polka dots and then have the larger polka dot here? Don't know that I like that much. Do this whole stripe thing again. Or I could do that. It's kind of nice with a little punch of color in there, isn't it? I think I might want to do sort of stripey thing. If we did this, I think this is a little more subtle, so let's go with that. So the triangles out of this, and then the top and base out of the larger polka dot. These are ready to be sewn on, but before I do that, I want to consider whether I want any, either the top or the bottom to be wonky. If I do, I think I want the top because I'd rather have the bigger triangles down here just for visual weight. The other one was wonky this direction. What if we make this one a little bit wonky this direction? So I'm going to, wait a minute, this is going this way how far I slide this up and down will determine how large that triangle is going to be. And it could be pretty small. I'm all right with that. So I will sew these two sides on then, and we'll add that on. These are sewed on and trimmed, and this is a little bit off kilter. And now my next and really final step is to figure out how wide I want these polka dot strips to be. I think not very wide, because then too much contrast then between the narrow style if I make this too wide. And maybe you want that kind of contrast. I don't think I do. So I'm going to cut a strip of this, and let's start with this strip since it's just hanging out there asking to be trimmed off. And lay that up there, and that will help us to gauge. Oops, you can't see that. Sorry about that. So let's see what we think. I'm thinking pretty narrow. What are your thoughts? I think quite narrow. I'm also thinking, what if, well, the stripes are going that way. Would it be better if I had the same fabric, these going up and down and these across? Would it be better if I just continued the same fabric, even if it is in a different direction? Let's see what we have here. So we've got polka dot on top and same stripe on the bottom. I guess, jeepers, I can't center this to save my day, can I? All right. Kind of depends on what I want to emphasize, I guess, because it's I see this more than I see this. If I use this, then that is my focus, which may or may not be what I want. If I want it to look more like a spool, then maybe I need it to be the same fabric. All right, let's do that. We can always do another one with the polka dot contrast. The next one I want to do similar to this, but I want to stitch one end of a thread or fiber in there so I can wind it around and off on the other side, and that'll just catch that end. That's for the next one. All right, I'm going to do this, probably just cut this roughly in half. Use one for the top and one for the bottom. And once you take away the seam allowances, of course, it's going to be even more narrow. All right, I will do that. And we're learning things as we go, aren't we? I think we are. I hope we are. This one is less wonky than this other one. It's brighter, but certainly less wonky. For a third one, I want to make the sides not parallel. These two, I've done a little bit of wonkiness at the top and the side over here, but not the spool side. So I'm thinking I might make the next one wonky sides, and I think I'll do it for Alice. Next up, as you can see, I have pulled out some Alice strips, red and white and pink. Little scattering of other colors, I guess. And I'm going to make a slender one, but I want it to lean. So I want to line these up so that I have more cutting room over here. So these need to kind of almost be staggered as I'm laying them out so that I can save on it while I am cutting. So then it will be something like this is the plan. Although we all know how my plans go sometimes, so I think it'll work. I'm going to put those together in this staggered fashion, and we'll see where we go from there. I have a strip set, which is staggered terribly unevenly, but it is staggered. So I want to, what I'm watching here is this selvage. I can have some there as if it's a white stripe, continuing this white stripe, and also I've got a seam allowance. So this strip is my limiting factor. And how crooked do I want to make this is the question. This is somewhat limiting over here if I want it to be a parallel. And then I have some strips here that I could use for another piece. So I will save those. And then I can decide if I want to make this parallel sides. I said I wasn't going to, didn't I? But I decided to make it crooked. So they could still be parallel, but crooked. Let's make it a little bit on the non-parallel side, not drastic, but a little bit. There's some crumb bits in there yet. Now, so I have a tall and slender but crooked piece, and put these back in the Alice stack. Now, what am I going to do for the spool bits? Alice has a lot of stripes, does she not? So, should we do stripes? Kind of like that idea. Do I want the stripes to run parallel to those or opposite those? And then what am I going to do over with the triangles? 'Tis a puzzlement. Do I want these to remain straight? Do I want to go kind of like that? So many choices. Well, this is Alice. And she's wandering and wandering in Wonderland. All right, I'm going to try doing a couple of strips of this for top and bottom. They do not have to be equal length or width, of course, but let's see what happens here. I have more if I need more. Kind of unfortunately going the slant is kind of going the wrong direction, isn't it? But do I want these like that? Sorry about the color change there. If I want that much stripe at the bottom, or that much of that, I mean. Well, then it sort of loses its tilted look, doesn't it? And maybe I want the lighter color at the top, just because. And then the white piece will be something like that. So long triangles. I may need wider bits of this stripe. That one's probably okay, but I think this one's going to be too short. That's all right, I have more of it. And then we need to decide what we're doing with the little triangles, plus their little hearts. So let's cut a couple just to see how they look. Do I want them going that way or this way? There's no hope I'm going to be able to match those up. But maybe that's all right. That might be all right that they're wonky like that. Here's another triangle I can take from here. Actually, I guess I don't have. Yes, I do. I did order some more fat quarters of this, didn't I? So we could have those crooked, or we could, we could have them straight, I guess. These would end up being crooked. There are so many decisions to make. You know, there aren't enough decisions in life. Now we've got to make them on quilts. No, but what well, they can't be like that. Maybe I do want them in opposition to that. Looks like someone is running very fast in Wonderland, doesn't it? All right, I may need to get a little bit more of this, although not necessarily. The ends of the spools do not have to cover the entirety of whatever the white bit's going to be, right? I may put some white on the ends of these, because this is going to be quite a bit over here, isn't it? What if it just stays like that? And I don't add any triangles at the end. It's just this. That would make life a whole lot easier, wouldn't it? Except I have to fit something in there. I could make it a half square triangle that fits on the end of that piece. It's always been another option for how we do this. Or we do that. This might be one where I could do it that way. Maybe a little too much. I don't know, I'm not hating it this way. We'll just do that one as another way you might do this, but that would need to be I mean, I could set in the seam, that's not a big deal to me, but it's not going to be something everyone wants to do. So you could do half square triangles at the end here. And maybe that's how we will go. I'll have to go get some more black and white stripe though. I am up to my old tricks again, hitting the button at the wrong time. So in order to get these side pieces here, I decided that I did, in fact, rather than doing half square triangles over here or just leaving it plain with the strip over here so that it would create that angle, I decided that I wanted to continue just as I have. So I took a good sized square of white that happened to be right here, actually, Kismet or something, and just cut this angle out of the white so I knew it would match, and then cut this angle out so that I knew I would have something that would end up square in the end in case that's what I want. Then I have these odd angles here, and all I'm doing is cutting a piece of the polka dot, which is somewhere in a lost video. I said that I decided to do polka dots on the triangles and stripes down here. So all I'm doing is cutting that's just such a short piece, but I think it'll work. So I'm just cutting something from this strip of black and white. Doesn't have to be square, but it could be. And then just auditioning where it might end up. I want to make sure that it covers this tip up here. So I'm just laying it out, and I know that I want these to go off the edge so that I have that point there. So I can do that. And then when I can fold this back, and then I just have to make sure that this is where my estimated seam is. Gotta make sure that that dog ear hangs out so this seam meets right on the edge, and same down here. And then stitch on that seam line, 1/4 inch. So all I'm doing is placing a square over this and just sort of auditioning. And my limits are how wide my strip is, or how long it is, and of course how wide it is. And I can just sort of audition where that could fit on here. So depending, I'm just using a, I don't know, sort of narrow strip, but not very. And then, okay, that looks good to me. It covers the corner. It's an angle that will work. And it's a little bit wonky, so I'll just slide that in there. I know that I have to, this is my seam line roughly about here, and I know that has to have that dog ear over the end, and then just stitch there, and I'll have that one finished. I ended up cutting a wider strip of the polka dot because with this angle, it would, if I used the other one, and I actually did stitch it down, but I would lose so much in the seams that you really wouldn't see it. So I've cut a wider piece so that I can make sure I get enough in there to look like a triangle there. It's wider than it needed to be, but better too wide than not wide enough. I can use that piece elsewhere. All right, so I'll stitch that and then trim it. All right, this is looking more like Alice already, isn't it? With their big polka dots, black and white polka dots. All right, now what I trimmed off of there, which was considerable, I can use over here. So that piece there, and maybe that one here, like that. And then I'll be ready to put the top and the bottom on. I'm thinking though, I need to have a black and white stripe bias piece going there, don't you think? Well, let me get these on first. Now I have to decide if I want to make the top and bottom bits of the spool wonky or straight. I'm uncertain. Here is straight. Here's a little wonky. I think I want it a little wonky. I want a little wonky this way or a little wonky that way. It's like it's running uphill here. It's a question of how much of that red might I want to lose. I think it's all right if I do that. So I want to actually trim just a bit going this way. Don't want to lose all my hard work on those polka dot corners. So that's going to be a little bit not straight. And then I will straighten it into a rectangle by trimming this. So I will go stitch this first, and then we'll come back. Well, I'll stitch this one in the top. I'll see after I put this one on. All right, I will be back shortly. Now I want to make this perpendicular to the sides. All of this may change, of course, as I figure out how to fit it into the quilt, but for now, I'm going to make it a pretty standard block. And then this one, I'll have going this way. Ooh, I'm going to be losing some of that, so it's not going to be very acute, but make it a little bit that way. All right, off to do that, and then we'll come back and take a look at what we've got. Here's the block, but we seriously need other things going on, don't you think? Some threads or some stitching or some, circles while we're at it. I'm wondering, I don't have circles of the right color. Well, I do have a pink one, I guess. Because it really needs something else. If I were making a whole quilt of these, it would be one thing, but because I have, this is Alice, so there needs to be a lot going on. I'm going to see if I can do a pretty narrow bias strip and then a couple of circles, maybe some in black and white and some in the red and pink stuff. I shall return and we'll cover it quickly because it's past lunch and I'm getting very hungry. We have a couple of pieces to play with anyway. I've got a small polka dot circle, which may or may not be the right pattern for it. And I have a black and white stripe, 1/4 inch wide bias that could go into any number of shapes. And then I made a circle out of some of the leavings of the diagonal cut piece. So I think it would also want some red and or pink in it, and I think I would do that with threads. Although I could do another bias strip, I guess. It just really needs something in this white space. Because Alice is, well, she's just in Wonderland and there's a lot going on. Uncontrolled chaos, basically. That is going to be it for today. I need to go get some lunch, check out the power situation here, and I will see you next week, hopefully. Thank you for joining me this week. I don't know what will be on tap next week. If they're taking out my patio, there may be nothing on tap. We'll have to see. So I hope to see you next week. In the meantime, be well, be safe, Be happy, be quilting. Peace out.